The crisp autumn air cut through Washington, D.C.'s financial district as Ibrahim Traoré pulled his tattered jacket tighter around his shoulders. The gleaming skyscrapers reflected the morning sun, casting long shadows over the busy sidewalks, where suited professionals hurried past, clutching coffee cups and briefcases, their eyes never meeting his. Ibrahim had chosen his disguise carefully, worn jeans with authentic fraying at the knees, a stained beanie covering his short hair, and several layers of mismatched clothing. The stubble on his face was 3 days old, and he'd rubbed a small amount of dirt on his cheeks and hands. To complete the illusion, he carried a worn backpack containing all his essential documents hidden beneath a thin sleeping bag. "Remember, why you're doing this," he whispered to himself in French, his native language slipping out during moments of intense focus. The words of his father, a farmer from Kera who had sacrificed everything for his education, echoed in his mind. "See with your own eyes, not through the eyes others create for you." Ibrahim paused before the imposing glass doors of Washington Capital Bank, its marble columns and brass fixtures broadcasting wealth and exclusivity. Taking a deep breath, he pushed through the revolving door and stepped onto the polished floor. Of the main lobby, the security guard tensed immediately. Ibrahim felt the man's eyes track him as he moved slowly toward the information desk. Other customers shifted subtly away, creating an invisible bubble around him as if poverty might be contagious. "Good morning," Ibrahim said to the young woman. At the reception desk, his accent carefully controlled but still present. "I would like some information about opening a business account, please." The receptionist glanced up, her professional smile faltering as she took in his appearance. "I'm sorry, sir, but all our financial advisors are busy at the moment." Her eyes darted to the security guard, a silent signal. "I am happy to wait," Ibrahim replied politely. "I understand busy schedules. Perhaps another branch would be better, equipped to handle your more situation," she suggested, sliding a generic brochure across the counter, keeping her fingers as far from his as possible. Before Ibrahim could respond, a man in an expensive charcoal suit approached, his gold watch catching the light. "Is there a problem here, Jessica?" The name tag on his lapel read, "Robert Wilson, Branch Manager." "No problem, Mr. Wilson. I was just explaining that we don't have anyone available right now." The manager barely glanced at Ibrahim before addressing the receptionist again. "We have 3 financial advisors currently available." He turned to Ibrahim, his expression hardening. "Sir, this is a private financial institution. Unless you have legitimate business here, I'll have to ask you to leave." Ibrahim straightened his posture slightly, some of his military bearing impossible to disguise. "I am interested in opening a business account for a community investment coalition. I have all necessary documentation and initial funding approval." Wilson's laugh was short and dismissive. "Look, we both know that's not happening. This isn't a shelter, and we don't offer microloans for—" He gestured vaguely at Ibrahim's appearance. "Your demographic. Now please leave before I call security." Several customers were watching now, some uncomfortable, others nodding in agreement with the manager. Ibrahim noticed a young black woman, frowning at the interaction, the only person who seemed disturbed by what was happening. "Is it bank policy to refuse service based on appearance?" Ibrahim asked quietly. Wilson's face flushed. "Security!" he called, and the guard immediately stepped forward. "Please escort this individual out. He's disturbing our customers." As the guard gripped his arm firmly, Ibrahim offered no resistance. "I understand," he said calmly. "Thank you for your time." The last thing Ibrahim saw before being pushed through the doors was Wilson wiping his hands with a handkerchief, as if the mere proximity to poverty had soiled him. Outside, Ibrahim walked several blocks before ducking into a coffee shop bathroom. He splashed water on his face, removing the smudges of dirt, and pulled a clean shirt from his backpack. His phone buzzed with a message from Aisha, his legal advisor. "How did it go?" the text read. Ibrahim's reply was simple. "Exactly as we expected. Meeting at 3 p.m. to discuss next steps." As he stepped back onto the street, now just another anonymous professional in the crowd, Ibrahim's expression remained neutral, but his eyes reflected something deeper, not anger, but resolve. The experiment had confirmed what he'd suspected from the moment he'd arrived in America 3 months ago. Some battles were fought with weapons, others with words, but the most important ones were fought with truth, and tomorrow, the truth would have its day. The Washington Capital Bank hummed with the usual midday activity. Robert Wilson was reviewing quarterly projections when his assistant knocked on his office door. "Mr. Wilson, there's a group here to see you. They don't have an appointment, but—" She hesitated. "Then tell them to make one," Wilson snapped without looking up. "Sir, they're insisting. There are lawyers with them." Wilson sighed dramatically and checked his Rolex. "Fine, 5 minutes." His assistant opened the door wider, and Wilson's annoyance turned to confusion as 5 people entered his office. 3 wore tailored suits, 2 women and 1 man who appeared to be attorneys based on their briefcases and stern expressions. But it was the 4th person who caught Wilson's attention, a tall, distinguished African man in a perfectly cut navy suit with military posture and intense, intelligent eyes. The 5th person, Wilson realized with growing discomfort, was the young black woman who had witnessed yesterday's incident. "Mr. Wilson," said one of the attorneys, extending her hand, "I'm Sarah Lawrence, legal counsel for the African Community Investment Coalition. This is my client, Ibrahim Traoré." Wilson's handshake was automatic, but his mind was racing. The name sounded vaguely familiar. "I believe we met yesterday," Ibrahim said, his voice now precise and educated. The same accent present but somehow transformed from liability to distinction. "Though you may not recognize me without the dirt on my face." The blood drained from Wilson's face as recognition dawned. "You're the homeless man you had forcibly removed from your bank?" "Yes." Ibrahim's expression remained calm, his voice level. "Though I am not, in fact, homeless. I am a geologist by training, former military officer, and currently a director of the African Community Investment Coalition." The young woman stepped forward. "And I'm Kimberly Johnson, financial journalist for the Washington Post. I was in your bank yesterday and witnessed everything. I've been following Mr. Traoré's work since his arrival in the United States." Wilson's eyes darted between them. "This is some kind of setup, a trap." "No trap, Mr. Wilson," Ibrahim replied. "Simply an experiment, one that yielded predictable but still disappointing results." Sarah Lawrence placed several documents on Wilson's desk. "My client came to your bank yesterday to inquire about legitimately opening business accounts for a coalition that has secured $5 million in initial funding from various international development agencies, private donors, and grants, specifically aimed at helping African immigrants establish businesses in the United States." Another attorney spoke up. "The coalition focuses particularly on those who have been granted asylum after working with US and UN forces in conflict zones across Africa, people who have risked their lives alongside American soldiers but find themselves marginalized upon arriving here." Wilson loosened his tie slightly. "I don't understand. Why the disguise? Why not just come in properly and—" "Because," Ibrahim interrupted, "how we are treated should not depend on how we are dressed. The information I sought was the same regardless of my appearance." Kimberly opened her notebook. "Mr. Traoré has conducted this same experiment at 6 different financial institutions across the city. 3 treated him with basic dignity despite his appearance. Your bank was the only one where he was physically removed by security." Wilson started to speak, but Ibrahim raised his hand. "I am not here for your apology, Mr. Wilson, though your institution will certainly need to issue one. I am here because despite yesterday's interaction, we still need banking services, and your bank has the most extensive international wire transfer capabilities in the district." "You still want to bank with us?" Wilson stammered. Ibrahim nodded. "The coalition represents over 300 African immigrants and first-generation Americans. Many were professionals in their home countries, doctors, engineers, teachers, who are now driving taxis and cleaning offices. Some fought alongside American forces against extremist groups. All deserve better than what they currently have." He leaned forward slightly. "The question, Mr. Wilson, is whether your bank wants to be part of the solution or remain part of the problem." The third attorney placed a business card on the desk. "We'll give you until tomorrow morning to decide. The Post will be running Ms. Johnson's story next week, with or without your comment. As they turned to leave, Wilson found his voice. Wait, Mr. Traoré, I apologize for how you were treated. It was unacceptable. Ibrahim paused at the door. It was indeed unacceptable, Mr. Wilson. But what makes it truly tragic is that it was not exceptional. Yesterday I was just one man, but tomorrow I represent hundreds. After they left, Wilson sat at his desk staring at the business card. The bank's diversity training had always seemed like a corporate formality to him, something to check off, a list. Now, for the first time, he understood it was about far more than legal compliance. It was about seeing the person behind the appearance. And he had failed spectacularly. Ibrahim stood at the window of his modest apartment, watching the rain fall over the National Mall. 3 days had passed since the confrontation at Washington Capital Bank, and things were moving faster than even he had anticipated. His phone hadn't stopped ringing since Kimberly's initial article appeared on the Washington Post's website that morning. The headline was direct, disguised as homeless, how an African war hero exposed banking discrimination in D.C. The story had been picked up by several national networks, with one already requesting an on-camera interview. Social media was buzzing, with both support and predictably backlash. You knew this would happen, Aisha said, setting a cup of coffee beside him. His legal advisor had become a friend during these intense weeks of preparation. Yes, but not this quickly, Ibrahim admitted. Americans move fast when a story catches their attention. For better or worse, she agreed. The bank's PR team has called 3 times. They want to meet on neutral ground this time. Ibrahim nodded, taking a sip of coffee. What about the threats? Aisha's expression tightened. Increasing. The usual. Keyboard warriors claiming you're playing the race card, that you set Wilson up, that you're some kind of foreign agitator. I am literally a foreign agitator, Ibrahim said with a rare smile, though not in the way they imagine. His phone rang. Again, Wilson's direct line. Ibrahim had refused to speak with him since their meeting, letting the attorneys handle all communication. This time he answered. Mr. Traoré, Wilson's voice was strained. I hope you'll agree to meet with me personally, not just our corporate team. Why should I? There was a pause. Because I need to make this right, not just for the bank's image, but because I was wrong, and I don't want to hide behind corporate statements. Ibrahim considered this. The coffee shop on 14th Street, 1 hour. An hour later, Ibrahim sat at a corner table, watching Wilson enter the cafe, looking distinctly uncomfortable without his usual banking environment. He was alone, no PR team, no attorneys. Thank you for meeting me, Wilson said, sliding into the chair across from Ibrahim. You have 10 minutes, Ibrahim replied. Wilson nodded. First, I want to apologize personally, not just on behalf of the bank. What I did was wrong. Why was it wrong, Mr. Wilson? The question seemed to catch Wilson off guard. Because I judged you based on your appearance, not on who you actually were. And if I had truly been homeless, Ibrahim pressed, would it still have been wrong? Wilson opened his mouth, then closed it again. Finally, he said, yes, it would still have been wrong. Ibrahim studied him for a long moment. That, Mr. Wilson, is the beginning of understanding. He took a document from his pocket and slid it across the table. This is what we want from your bank. Not just accounts for our coalition, but a comprehensive program for financial education and access for immigrants and refugees, loan opportunities for those without established credit histories, community banking representatives who speak multiple languages. Wilson scanned the document. This is extensive. So is the problem, Ibrahim replied simply. The board will. I need time to. The board has had decades, Ibrahim interrupted. Now they have until Friday. Wilson looked up, surprised at the deadline. That's impossible. I'm a former military officer who spent years fighting extremists in Mali alongside your troops. I watched friends die defending villages that most Americans couldn't locate on a map. I've crossed the Sahara and navigated European asylum systems. Nothing about my journey has been possible, Mr. Wilson, yet here I sit. He leaned forward. In my country, I saw how corporations extract resources while leaving communities poorer than before. Here I see banks extract wealth from communities while denying them the tools to create their own. The geography changes, but the pattern remains the same. Wilson was silent for a long moment. The publicity around this is already costing the bank millions in stock value. Good, Ibrahim said. Perhaps finally money is speaking the right language. As their meeting ended, Ibrahim noticed a group of young African men watching from across the street. They nodded respectfully as he emerged from the cafe. Word was spreading through the community about what he was doing, and with it, something. Even more valuable than money was growing: hope. That evening, as Ibrahim prepared for his television interview, he received a text message with a photo. It showed a sign being installed in the window of Washington Capital Bank. Community banking services available. Se habla español. On parle français. نتحدث العربية. Below the photo was a message from Wilson. Just the first step. Board meeting tomorrow. They're listening now. Ibrahim showed the message to Aisha. It begins, he said quietly. She smiled. No, my friend. It continues. What began was long before you arrived here. Ibrahim nodded, thinking of his homeland, of the struggles that had brought him to this moment. True. We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. As he adjusted his tie before the camera crew arrived, Ibrahim thought about how appearances mattered in ways both profound and superficial. Tomorrow he would appear on national television not as himself, not as a disguised homeless man, but as a symbol of dignity that transcended circumstances, of resilience that overcame prejudice, and of the simple truth that human worth existed, regardless of what others could see. The national morning show's lighting made the studio uncomfortably warm, but Ibrahim sat perfectly composed in the guest chair. Across from him, the host, Diane Reynolds, reviewed her notes one last time before the camera's red light blinked on. We're back with a story that's gone viral this week, Diane said to the camera. Ibrahim Traoré, a former military officer from Burkina Faso, who was granted asylum in the United States last year, conducted what some are calling a social experiment at several DC banks, exposing what appears to be discrimination against the homeless. Mr. Traoré, thank you for joining us. Thank you for having me, Ibrahim replied. Let me ask directly. Many viewers are wondering why someone in your position would disguise themselves as homeless. Critics are saying this was a setup designed to embarrass the banking industry. Ibrahim nodded, having anticipated this framing. I understand that perspective, but this was not about embarrassment. It was about illumination. When I arrived in America, I was struck by a paradox. This country celebrates the idea that anyone can succeed with hard work, yet places invisible barriers before certain groups. But isn't it natural for businesses to be cautious about who they serve? Diane pressed. Caution is understandable. Dehumanization is not, Ibrahim replied. At 3 banks, I was treated with basic dignity despite my appearance, offered water, given information, treated as a person. At Mr. Wilson's bank, I was physically removed within minutes. The screen split to show Robert Wilson, joining remotely from his office. And as I've said publicly, Mr. Traoré is absolutely right. Our actions were inexcusable. That's why today, Washington Capital Bank is announcing a new community banking initiative specifically designed to address the barriers faced by immigrants, refugees, and yes, the unhoused population. Wilson detailed the program, which incorporated most of Ibrahim's demands. As he spoke, Ibrahim studied the man's expression. There was something there beyond corporate damage control. Perhaps, Ibrahim thought, genuine transformation was possible. Mr. Traoré, Diane continued, before coming to America, you served alongside UN and US forces fighting extremist groups in Mali. How does that experience compare to what you're doing now? Ibrahim considered his answer carefully. In combat, the enemy is clear. Here, the enemy is invisible. It's in assumptions, in systems, in the ways we've been taught to see or not see each other. In Mali, I fought with weapons. Here, I fight with truth. Some would call your methods confrontational, Diane suggested. Would call them necessary, Ibrahim replied. When I was fighting in Mali, American soldiers were beside me. They didn't question my worth because of my nationality or appearance. We were comrades. Yet when those same soldiers return home, or when people like me come to America seeking asylum, suddenly worth becomes conditional. The conversation shifted to Ibrahim's coalition and its work, as he explained their community lending programs and entrepreneurship training. Images appeared on screen showing African immigrants opening businesses, graduating from educational programs, and mentoring American youth in underserved communities. What most people don't realize, Ibrahim explained, is that many immigrants arrive with advanced degrees and valuable skills, but those qualifications often aren't recognized here. So you have doctors driving Ubers, engineers working as janitors, professors delivering food. Our coalition helps bridge that gap. As the interview concluded, Diane asked one final question. What do you say to viewers who might see your story as divisive in an already divided country? Ibrahim leaned forward slightly. I would say this. I did not come to America to divide, but to build. In my home country, I learned that real strength isn't in walls, but in bridges. Bridges between people, between communities, between nations. America taught the world about equality and opportunity. I'm simply asking America to teach itself the same lesson again. 2 weeks later, Ibrahim stood before a modest storefront in a predominantly immigrant neighborhood of Washington, D.C. The sign above the door read, Community Capital, Financial Services for All. Behind him stood a diverse group, coalition, members, bank representatives, community leaders, and most surprisingly, Robert Wilson. Today, Ibrahim announced to the gathered crowd and media, we open not just a banking center, but a door. Washington Capital Bank has committed $20 million to this initiative, which will be led by community members themselves. He turned to Wilson, who stepped forward. This partnership represents a new direction for our institution, Wilson said. Mr. Traoré didn't just expose our failings, he showed us a better path forward. As Ibrahim cut the ribbon, he spotted a familiar face in the crowd, the security guard who had escorted him from the bank that first day. The man nodded respectfully, and Ibrahim nodded back. No words were necessary. That evening, as Ibrahim walked home through the city streets, he passed a homeless man sitting on a bench. Without hesitation, Ibrahim sat down beside him. Rough day? The man asked, surprised at the company. I've had worse, Ibrahim replied, offering the man half of his sandwich. I've also had better. Tomorrow is another chance for both. They ate in companionable silence as the sun set over the capital, two men momentarily visible to each other in a city where too many remained unseen. In his pocket, Ibrahim's phone buzzed. With messages from home, his family in Burkina Faso had seen the news coverage online. Their pride was palpable even through text. He would call them later, would tell them about this strange new battlefield, where victory came not from defeating enemies but from changing hearts, including, perhaps most importantly, his own. Ibrahim's story reminds us that true dignity isn't granted by circumstance or appearance, it's inherent in our humanity. In a world quick to judge by externals, the courage to see beyond surfaces might be our most revolutionary act.